Todd Shelnut here with CFI Pro Courses, and this post is going to be directed towards one of the common questions that I get in regards to the CFI check ride, and that is, Todd, what's going to be on the check ride? How are the questions going to be asked? What's the examiner going to say? What's the examiner going to wear? They don't ask that. But anyway, the bottom line is, how can I be better prepared for this check ride? What are they going to ask? Well, the bottom line is that the only way to get properly prepared is just to educate yourself more and to know more. There's no quick way out of this. There's no rote side of this that's going to get you through this check ride. If the examiner senses some of that, well, it's probably going to end up in a bad way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you how I actually would do the check ride, how I would ask the regulatory questions. But this is more in a like an exam setting, but it's going to be in more of a training session. So not only will I ask the question to the proposed applicant, but I'll also give the corrected version and how it should sound to be more professional. And we're going to try to go through from 61.1 and ask questions all the way up to an added category class. So we're going to break this down into a couple of sections. There is a lot of fluff in here, and no, I'm not going to go through and edit it out. There's a lot of people that always tell me that I'm long-winded and I got a lot of fluff. Well, just fast forward. That's what that button down there. Listen to my videos on 1.5 speed. That's what it takes. But it is what it is, unedited, raw data. So you'll be able to hear and see what goes on in a live fashion. And again, if you need to, go ahead and fast forward it. Let's take a look here at one of our mock students here. His name is Sterling. And let's see how Sterling does with a barrage of regulatory questions. Let's take a look.
No worries. All right. Well, I take it you've been studying and you're ready to go?
I have been studying. I feel like I could always be more prepared, but yeah, we'll see how I do.
Okay, very good. All right, so we'll start off with the what you said you wanted to go over regs and endorsements or endorsements. Is that correct?
Yeah, regulations and endorsements is fine too. I don't think that'll hurt, but I just, there's all these regulations and I got them all tabbed out, but I'm not sure how the questions are going to be asked, I guess. And
sure, we'll just kind of go through and take a very large sampling throughout and kind of we'll actually kind of go in order to make it easier for your tabbing. And if you want to, during the second part of this, I won't go in order and I'll just kind of go all over the place. That way it's a little bit more difficult for you to stay along with the conversation. So are you ready for me to start?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go. So you're going to, after this check ride, Sterling, you're going to be a CFI and you're going to go out there in the world and you're going to start flight instructing. And, in the past, when you were a pilot, you probably got asked on your prior check rides, what documents do you need to have in your possession to act as PIC? Have you ever been asked that question before as a pilot?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Well, so now since you're going to be a CFI, can you tell me what documents you need to have in your possession in order to act as a CFI?
Yes, sir. You need your medical, you need your pilot certificate. If it's after this check ride and I'm going to be acting as an instructor, I would need my instructor certificate as well, and a driver's license or a form of photo ID.
Okay.
Approved by the United States government. And I've got medical certificate 6123. Charlie goes into some of the specifications of what counts as a U.S. driver's license. But
yeah, it can be issued by the federal government or state, but it can't be a local or county government. Mm-hmm. So even though we say government issued photo ID, it has to be either through federal or state. That's the answer to that. This is going to be found in 61.2 and 61.3 of the regs. So in regards to the other questions, the other answers that you gave, You are correct. If you want to give the more professional answer, you could just say an unexpired medical, at least a third class. You need to say, I'm going to have a government issued photo ID, unexpired, issued by a federal or state agency. My unexpired CFI certificate and a pilot certificate with a current flight review. So we want to make sure everything's current.
Yeah, understood.
All right. Any questions on that?
No, sounds good.
Okay. You have a student that is starting with you, and the student tells you that about 18 months ago, they received a DUI and they were arrested and charged and convicted of a DUI. How does that affect their flight training they're going to do with you? Or does it?
I'm not sure where to find that one. Yes, I know that you can, that your certificate can be denied for reissuance if you have a DUI or convicted of, okay, 6115, offenses involving alcohol or drugs. Cancellation, revocation.
So it's been a little over 18 months since his conviction.
It says denial of an application for up to 1 year after the date of that act.
Okay.
Except for motor vehicle action that results from the same incident or arises out of the same fatal circumstance or factual circumstances. Motor vehicle occur within the 3 years or previous. I would have to read this whole thing pretty well to be positive. It says 1 year in one section, then it says 3 years in another section. Denial for any application under this part for up to 1 year. I guess if we're playing Jeopardy, I'm going to go with 1 year, so he's okay at 18 months.
Yeah, so 1 year is it. That's what they would be looking for. If it's happened within the year, they wouldn't. He's not going to get a pilot certificate within that year. Now you can start training within that year, just as long as it's been more than a year after you put that on the certificate.
So it's similar to an actual driver's license in that way, because you get, it's 12 months, I think, that they suspend your license.
Correct.
Okay.
Good deal. Let's see here. So as a newly certificated CFI, you'll be a CFI for single engine airplane, correct?
Yes.
So tell me, and I'm wanting to know the answer that you need to give me needs to be from a holistic view, meaning you need to be able, the answer you need to give me has to pertain that you can do the entire form of what I'm asking. So what I'm asking is, what training can you, the day after this check ride, what kind of training can you go out and perform all the way through? In other words, from start to finish without bringing any other type of instructor into the equation. What can you do as a CFI single engine with no double I, no MEI? What kind of training can you do from start to finish without bringing any other instructor into the equation?
I can give training for pilot certificates. So recreational, private, commercial, and sport, I believe. But I would primarily direct people for, doing their private license, because you get many more privileges and less limitations. What
else can you do?
I could do flight reviews.
Okay.
Flight instructor privileges, so 61-193. Student pilot certificate, private pilot certificate, flight instructor certificate after I meet the requirements, which is 24 months and a certain amount of hours. I believe it's 40 hours of dual instruction training. But flight reviews, I can give endorsements for. Are you looking for endorsements right now? Or
Yeah, so when I say holistically, I'm talking about, like, for instance, could you, let's just talk about that. So you said sport pilot. I agree with sport. I think you can do sport, no problem whatsoever. Recreational, I believe you can do that holistically from start to finish. Private, I believe you can also do from start to finish. Commercial, I don't believe you on that.
Okay, because of the 10 hours of instrument training.
So yeah, so you couldn't do a commercial certificate all the way through. Have to farm out the 10 hours. I agree that you can do a flight review. Okay. Three other things that some people just don't say because they just don't think about it is, as a flight instructor, you could also do the wings program flights. You can participate in the FAA's Pilot Proficiency Awards program and do the wings flights. That would be, that's not associated with a certificate or a rating. You could also do accept an application for a student pilot or for a remote pilot Part 107.
Okay.
You can do both of those through just utilizing the IACRA system. It doesn't require anything on your part.
So you accept the application on IACRA for a Part 107. That's
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah, so the person would do the application, and it's done exactly the same as a student pilot application. So they would do the student pilot or the Part 107 application, and then you, and just by the way, this is something, you can't do a remote pilot certificate remotely. You have to be on the same terminal, the same computer, the same laptop, the same mobile device, because it transfers right to another screen, and you can't access it, the application from another area. It has to be on that same device, so it can't be done remotely. But they'll do the application, and then they'll give you their FTN, and then you'll log in, you'll pull up their application, you'll review it for accuracy with their information that they're giving you, and then you'll submit it to the FAA, and then a couple of weeks later, they'll get a certificate in the mail.
Okay.
So did good on that. It's just the only one I would have an issue with would be the commercial. So good to go. All right.
Got it.
And that, that would be under kind of like a 61.5 question, but really kind of 61.5 and a 61.195 kind of combined a little bit. What can you do? It's really kind of weird because we don't spend a lot of time understanding what, authorized instructor means. We don't spend a lot of time in our ground school talking about what that actually means. You're signing it as an authorized instructor, what you can and cannot do. Do you have a complex endorsement, correct? Or did you just do TAA training?
No, I have a complex.
Okay. Some people don't anymore because they just do the TAA training, and they don't do that unless they did some multi thing. But
seems like it was a good idea to learn how retractable landing gear worked. And the constant speed prop, but I guess the TAA isn't required to have that.
Yeah, you don't need anything for that.
No.
Just need it logged correctly. Training per 61.129 Alpha 3 double I. Anyway, not like I'm remembering any of that. So your student just got a brand spanking new temporary certificate from the examiner. They just passed your first student just passed their first check ride. How long is that temporary certificate they give them? How long is that good for?
For their student pilot license? For student pilot certificate?
Any temporary certificate that's ever issued. If it's like that little piece of paper that you get from the examiner the day you leave the check ride, how long is that good for?
I believe, I feel like I should look this up before I answer your question. I want to make sure I give you the correct answer first time. Okay. Place lost or destroyed. I feel like I'm pretty close here.
Yeah, so it's going to be in 61.17.
Okay, I was on 19. I was almost there. Temporary certificate, got it. So 120 days.
Very good. So if well, actually, I'm not going to ask you that question, but let's go on to the next one. How long is a pilot certificate valid for?
So a pilot certificate does not have any specific expiration, but you need your flight review after 24 months.
Okay. Very good. How long is a flight instructor certificate valid for?
Flight instructor expires after 24 months from the month in which it was issued, renewed, or reinstated as appropriate.
Very good. How long is a ground instructor certificate valid for? And if you don't know this one, that's fine.
It has no specific expiration date.
Good.
And I probably wouldn't say this in the check ride, but just for you and I'm not sure. I probably could find it, but I believe it's within the past 12 months you're supposed to have given ground instruction.
Yep, I think that's 61.215. Now you're testing my knowledge.
I wouldn't open up the can of worms if I wasn't asked in the check ride, but
go to 61.215 and look at the last paragraph of the thing. Might be 213.
215 is privileges.
Should be the last paragraph.
No, it's okay. So recent experience requirements is 61.217. Yeah, during the preceding 12 calendar months.
17. All right, 213, 215.
Hey, you were damn close.
In a hot minute is what I think the way to refer to that nowadays. Okay. Yeah. So what do we have? We have a pilot certificate. We have a CFI certificate. We have a ground instructor certificate. What about a student pilot certificate? How long is that valid for?
So I believe that one is also no set expiration date, but they would need reissuance of their solo endorsements.
Yeah, so don't create a rabbit hole.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's no set expiration.
No set expiration. Very good. If there's ever anything ever brought up about a paper student pilot certificate, they're no longer applicable. They completely 100% expired in February of 2021. So they're no longer can ever be asked about. Now, the only thing I guess the one thing that could be asked is this: what if a student pilot, which actually this happened just the other day, actually, so I guess it is still has merit in it. But a student came into the school and the instructor was doing the check-in process, and the student had an original third-class medical and student pilot certificate, which is combined into one document. So it has like the third-class medical, and then it says FA third-class medical, and then underneath that it says student pilot certificate. And that was only valid for the length of the medical. Okay, so it matched the length of the time the medical was done. But then they did away with the paper student pilot certificates and went to the plastic student pilot certificate in 2016. And so the longest length of time that you could ever have a third class medical would be how many years or it's months?
60 months.
And so now that's why when they did that ruling in February 2016, that no matter what, February 2021, and so that's it. But the student came in and that's all he had, right? He had a student pilot certificate, which was paper. So the instructor called me and said, hey, is this, what can I do with this? Is it still valid? What does it need to do? And I said, and the real question was, when I go into IACRA, do I actually put in there that he has a student pilot certificate based off the number that's on the medical, because there's a number that's written on the medical. That's your medical number. And the answer is no, you would not need to put any of that information into IACRA. You would just start the application fresh as if the person had never had a student pilot certificate. And it could be where the student has, I thought I had some here. But anyway, the examiners in the field used to be able to issue, I have some around here somewhere, but a student pilot certificate. It is yellow in color, and it's in a small booklet just like this. You don't want to get one of these.
No, never seen one of those before.
This is the reason why we call them pink slips,
Ah,
because they're pink. But anyway, so the 60 calendar months, 5 years, that's what that is. Let's say here. What minimum of class medical does a student need in order to train?
just to train, they don't need one.
And there you go, man. You saw right through my trickery. That's good. In order to train, they don't need one. Very good. But in order to solo, what do they need?
They need at least a third class.
Okay, very good. Very good.
Unless they've had a medical before, which I don't know how that would even work. Then they could use basic med.
Yep. We'll cover that.
Okay.
Okay. So the simple questions as well, in regards to the medical request, I say simple questions, it's not simple, some, so I'll just ask the question. I have a first class medical and I am ATP multi and single engine rated. I want to go out and fly my rental plane around the local area. However, I have not renewed my first class medical in 18 months. Am I legal?
You're just renting the airplane and flying around, or are you flying for compensation or hire?
No, I'm just flying the airplane around by myself.
Yeah, because you only need a third class medical in that situation, and that's valid for 60 months. Well, your first class medical is valid for 60 months because you're under. Wait, how old are you?
49.
Then it's only valid for 24, I think.
I would say you're correct. Okay, so after 12 months, is my medical still a first class?
It's still a first class, but the privileges you're allowed to exercise revert to the equivalent of the other class. It's kind of complicated.
So after 12 months, my first class will revert to what privileges only?
To private pilot privileges, or the privileges of a third class.
Correct. Very good. That's a good way to say it. Good way to say it. Those questions like that, that's like a private level type thing. Those are really the big killers on this check ride. So you did good on that. You answered those very well.
Thank you.
So I know also that when I became a commercial or private pilot, that I had these limitations that I had to know under 6189 for a student and 61113 for a private pilot. But also when I became a commercial pilot, that in 61133 it says I have limitations for a commercial pilot. And then when I became ATP, there's also limitations and privileges for an ATP pilot. When I'm out flying around in my rental airplane, which one of those privileges and limitations apply to me? Is it the ones for the private, the ones for the commercial, or the ones for the ATP?
That's a cool question. You're exercising the privileges of a private pilot. So the privileges and limitations of a private pilot.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because I'm not working at ATP. I'm not working commercial, so that doesn't apply. It's really kind of freaky sometimes because people think, well, I hold a commercial pilot certificate. I think it should be that I'm exercising those privileges. And I'm like, nope, that's not what you're doing. You're just out there tooling around, just out there flying around. So you have to still know all the privileges and limitations of a private pilot. Otherwise, you get in trouble. Very good. You had a student of yours you're currently training, and they just got married, and their wedding, after their wedding and everything, she took on her husband's name. Walk me through the process of what she would need to do to get her name changed on her certificates.
Yeah, so there is a change of name in 6125. Let's see if this gives us anything. Application to change the name or certificate issued under this part must be accompanied by the airman's certificate, copy of marriage license, court order, or other document verifying the name change. The documents in paragraph A of the section will be returned to the applicant after inspection. Where do you send them to?
To the FSDO.
The FSDO.
Yep.
And if you change it on Niagara application, if you're just so happen to be applying for a new certificate at the same time, you can change it on there too, can't you?
Not the name.
Okay, just the
address, stuff like that, but you can't change your name. IACRA won't take the application. You can make the changes, but it won't take the application.
Okay, so FSDO.
Yep, FSDO is what you have to do. So you had a student that you were flying with, and they are already a private commercial student, and you're helping them with their ATP single engine. You're just doing a little bit of flight training with them. You don't need to sign them off for that. That's a self-endorsed kind of thing. But during that time, they are out flying around and they do something that's very bad. Say they flew into a presidential TFR, and they are thinking in their mind, or they know for a fact, maybe they've even been advised by chief counsel from the FAA that they're going to revoke their certificate. They haven't done it yet, but they're going to revoke their certificate. What options does that person have right now to not get their pilot certificate revoked? What could they do on their own accord to avoid revocation of their certificate?
Fill out an ASA report.
That would not work.
No.
This is in conjunction with 61-127, if that helps.
Probably does. Flight proficiency for commercial pilots. That's I'm not sure.
So they can voluntarily surrender their certificate, and it would not count as a revocation.
You said it's in 61-127.
Yeah, 61 dot. Oh, I'm so sorry. 61-27. So sorry.
61-27. Oh, it was right below the last one you had me looking at.
Yep. I'm going in order.
Okay.
Yep. So they can actually, to avoid a suspension or revocation, they can actually just hand their certificate in, and it would not go on record that this had ever happened.
So if he was doing training for his ATP, then he would have surrendered his commercial, and then he can go back and take his commercial check ride again.
Eventually, because he already has all the flight time in his book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he already meets all the requirements. He just needs 3 hours within the preceding 60 days, or 3 hours within the preceding 2 calendar months preceding the month of the check ride, and good to go.
That's a interesting way to handle that situation. That's probably a lot cheaper than hiring lawyers and stuff. Just take a check ride.
I tell you that you'd have to wait a year.
Okay, so where does it say you have to wait a year?
Huh?
Where does it say you have to wait a year? Because I feel like I've read that somewhere, but
So the year wait is not in the regs. It's actually in FSIMS. It's in the 8900.1 guidance.
okay.
I don't know where it's exactly located there. I'd have to look it up. It's in FSIMS. It's in the 8900.1.
Okay.
I have lost my wallet. It had my medical, it had my certificates, everything in there. I've completely lost it. I went to the DMV, I got a copy of my driver's license, or maybe I had my passport or something. So I've got to alternate back up to that. But I need to have right now an immediate copy of my medical, an immediate copy of my pilot certs and instructor certs. Where can I go get that right now on a Saturday morning?
The FSDO,
FSDO's
they're
not
closed. You go to Oklahoma. I don't-
they're not open either. Well, they kind of are. They're kind of like everybody else nowadays. You know, they operate online.
Mhm.
So maybe that's a hint.
Okay.
Okay,
So
let me just go ahead.
so in any other manner or form approved by the, you can request online airman services at FAA.gov.
Absolutely 100%. You just go to, you go online and you go to the Airman's Registry. And once you sign up on that or create an account, everybody should have an account on there. There's a little link on there and it just says replace lost or stolen certificates, or request an immediate notification or request an immediate thing. And you click on the link, you fill out some things and it sends it to your email within like 10 minutes.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's good for 60 days, by the way. That's definitely a stump the chump question right there.
60 days.
Yeah,
Write that right in the regs.
The paper that they email you is good for 60 days. Okay. As an instructor, you have a student come to you and this person has a Piper Meridian. Actually, let's just say it's a Piper Malibu. This airplane is capable of going to 25,000 feet or above 25,000 feet. And it is high performance. So it's high altitude, high performance. Can you give training in that plane?
Well, first off, I'm not sure which one is which. I guess you're telling me, but is it pressurized?
Yeah, it's pressurized.
Okay, then yeah, it is high altitude, high performance. And if I have those endorsements, then I can.
If you have the endorsements, that's what I'm asking there. So that's good.
It's a caveat that I wouldn't open up during check ride. So there would be no requirement for you to have a double I rating if you were doing training at 25,000 feet, even though you have to be on an instrument flight plan, would there?
Let me think about that just a second. So who's the PIC of the flight?
They likely are.
Then if they're not instrument rated, then no. If they're instrument rated, then you just stop giving instruction at 18,000.
But don't you need to, for high altitude, don't you need to take them over?
Well, I'm just answering your question specifically as stated.
Uh-huh.
So could I do a flight with them? Yes. I couldn't go above 18,000 as this, given instruction above that. I'd have to look at everybody's qualifications and state what we're doing at what altitude before I could say, yes, that's what we're going to be doing.
If they were instrument rated and they were PIC,
then you just stop giving instruction at 18,000.
Okay.
Now, here's a different way to ask that question. You've never flown that airplane at all, period. And it's say it's a Pilatus. Could you give a flight review in a Pilatus without a high altitude and high performance endorsements?
If you didn't have a high altitude and high performance endorsement, or if the student didn't have?
You did not. You do not hold that as a flight instructor.
Are they PIC?
Yep, they're PIC, they're flight review, IPC, the whole thing. They're jiffy. They just they're within 24 months, but they want to do they want to do a flight review with you in the Pilatus.
It wouldn't be prudent, but I think you could.
There's no limitations at all to that. You absolutely positively can do that because you're not acting in any role at that point. And as a flight instructor, you don't need to, you're not giving, you could be giving instruction, but it's a flight review. So it depends on how you log it in the logbook. But now you do not need to you do not need to be perfectly qualified to do that because you're not acting in any role to fly in the plane.
So the way you just worded that, does a flight review not count as flight instruction?
Yes and no.
Okay.
You're just basically going up to do a review.
Yeah.
It is labeled as flight instruction, and then again, it is not labeled as flight instruction. If you don't give any instruction during that time, if the review is good and you never touch anything and you never say anything because the person's flying is good, then no instruction took place. This is kind of a weird, this is really kind of a weird gray area. And whenever I'm having conversations with people about this, there's a lot of, are you sure kind of thing? And so when they start that, I just say, like, just tell me what's going on. What is the reg state? What are you doing? Are you doing that? No. Well, then do you need to be qualified? No. Okay. We don't try to rewrite the regs. We don't try to redefine the regs. In legal stuff, it's plain language of the regs or the spirit of the regs.
There's no plain language in legality.
Yeah, I'm with you. But a lot of the times they'll just say it's plain language because they'll say, have a specific sentence, whatever that sentence is. And, they'll say like 103, 91.103, like probably one of my most favorite regs and how things are worded. But it's like the pilot in command must be familiar with all available information concerning the flight.
Yeah, right.
So if you missed a piece of information concerning that flight and you mess up, right? The FAA is going to come back to you and they say, well, you should have been familiar with that. And you're like, dude, how would I have even known to even go to look for that information or to find out that information? And the FAA will say to you, well, it's because you're, as a pilot in command, you're in violation of 91.103. You're supposed to be familiar with all available information concerning the flight. Even if you didn't even know, it's kind of like going into another state when you have your gun on you.
Yeah.
Like, well, I didn't know. And they're like, yeah, well, ignorance of the law does not constitute. And then same thing with them, ignorance of the regs or how that works. Isn't that crazy?
Does it work if you tell them they have stupid laws?
I think it may.
Say refer back to the Constitution of our country.
Yeah, I'm a sovereign citizen. That doesn't apply.
Yeah, well, I don't want to go too deep into that. I know you're just using it as an example.
Yeah,
but then they give you the specifics of what the information must include. So
yeah, some of these scenarios that I'm giving you, if you change one item in it, it gives you a total different scenario.
Yeah.
You just change one little item in there.
No, I like him. I like him a lot. This is
So if
good stuff.
I don't have to go up to 25,000 unless I'm going to give a high altitude endorsement. Just because I'm flying, and of course that was what you said. You said, well, don't I have to go up to 25? Yeah, you do. You got to go above 25 if you want to give the endorsement. But that's how you can change the scenario. So can you do a flight review in the plane? Yes. Can you give a
Right.
high altitude endorsement? No, because you don't have it and you're not a double I, so you can't go above 18,000 feet in that particular instance, even though you're not giving instrument instruction, you're doing a high altitude endorsement. You've got to be qualified to act as PIC above 18,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I could give the high performance endorsement.
You could. All right, so let's stay on that. Let's stay on that 6131. You're going to give me a high performance endorsement. Let's stick with something that you know. You're going to give me a complex endorsement, right? What entries must you make in my logbook?
So I'm going to log just the instruction time. I have to write in your logbook as a flight instructor for time I gave instruction. I need to also go over ground instruction, and then the actual complex endorsement. I want to know the actual endorsement.
Okay, that's good. Most people just say the endorsement for the complex endorsement. You actually told me that you would put the flight in the logbook, and you told me you'd put the ground in the logbook. It is very common that if I were to look at any person's logbook, and I don't really care who it is, it's about a 90% probability or higher that if a person has a high performance or a complex or a high altitude, that they'll have the flight, they'll show me the flight, they'll show me the endorsement, but they won't have the ground. And then when I tell them that the endorsement's not valid because they don't have the ground, it really throws a monkey wrench in the system.
So in the little notes section on the side of my logbook, if the instructor writes, ground in there, is that acceptable?
So here's the rub.
Do they have to reference the exact regulation?
Here's the deal with that. Training per what? What would you write in that remark?
6131 echo I.
Okay, so
or just 6131 echo.
Let's say if that person has an accident in that complex airplane, and the FAA comes to you as a flight instructor who gave the endorsement, and they said, what did you cover in his ground? What are you going to be able to, if it was several months ago, how are you going to know? What are you going to say? What are you going to do?
I told him to read the PHAC.
There you go. I told him to go home and watch these YouTube videos and to read the airplane flying handbook, and we should be good to go.
Yeah, probably airplane flying handbook. Yeah.
So you have to be specific about what you went over. And here's the rub. God, I've already said that twice. I'm not going to say that again. Here's the issue there. The FAA doesn't tell you what to go over.
Mm-hmm. Just says receive and log ground and flight training.
Yep. So they do have a chapter. I don't know if it's in the new airplane flying handbook that just came out last week, but I'd have to look in there. But there is like a specific part, I think somewhere, where it says introduction to flying complex airplanes or something like that. And
they got to come out with new stuff.
Yeah. Did you know they just came out with a new airplane flying handbook?
No. Does that mean mine's not good enough anymore?
Yours is not good enough anymore. That is correct.
Oh no.
Sorry.
I got done highlighting that whole thing.
Yeah, and it's a tremendously large amount of changes.
Great.
So just make sure when you look at the PDF file, because it's not available in print anywhere. Not yet, but if you'd like a complimentary copy, because I also print FAA handbooks, professionally printed, professionally bound. I'll send you a copy and you can play with it and use it and tell me what you think about it and give me input back on it. All right.
Sounds good.
I have another batch that's being printed next week. And I'll send that one out to you. And just when you get it, just tell me, what you think about it. How'd you like the cover? How did the pages flip? All kind of stuff, write in it, highlight in it. How did the page accept your highlighter? How did it accept your pen? Did you write on it with your pen? Did it smudge? I mean, all kind of stuff, like from an operational standpoint, how did you like it?
Okay.
Because I don't sell these things cheap. You can buy this book for $19, or probably even cheaper, but I sell these books for upwards to $40, but it's because it's designed to be used by a professional. Like these are my aviation instructor handbooks. See how
Yeah.
it's on the side?
Mhm.
It's a little bit smaller. It has curved edges on it. It's every way that I like for the instructor handbook to be. And of course I can lay it down flat on the desk. The paper is much better quality and accepts pen, and it doesn't have a bleed through. Just a lot better quality book. So this is you can't go out and purchase this book anywhere else. No one else makes them as good as this. Not trying to sell you anything. I'm just stating the fact. But
No, I understand.
anyway,
I hear you.
That's good that you got that. That's a good. The ground thing is so incredibly important. And if I don't want to be at a check ride, I can just simply do that, especially if it's a commercial check ride and I don't want to be there, or even if it's a CFI check ride. If I find an error in their logbook, I don't have to do the check ride. I can check through. I will guarantee you this. I don't care who the applicant is. I can always find something where I can't do the check ride. I can find something wrong with that plane, and I can find something wrong in their logbook.
Yeah. Well, that's what I figure. If the person doesn't like you, then they're not gonna pass you.
It's all about that first impression, man.
Yeah.
If you don't have that good first impression when you walk in, I don't ever tell anybody they need to be dressed like super nice, but if you walk in Bermuda shorts and flip flops and a tank top, I'm gonna find a reason not to do that check ride.
Yeah, no, I'm walking in there professional looking. If one day in my life, or a couple days in my life, it'll be for check rides.
There you go. Okay, let's look at something else. I want to send someone to get their knowledge test done.
Mhm.
What do they need to have? What do they need to have with them in order to be qualified to take a knowledge test?
Well, they need their alpha. So for private pilot, they would need a alpha 32 endorsement or 6135 alpha 1, 103, 105.
So just an endorsement, right? You don't have to be specific on this like private. So they must have an endorsement.
Okay, yeah, an endorsement, and I believe they need their driver's license and pilot certificate.
I mean, but where does it say that though? How do you know that's what they need? And remember, I'm going in order in the regs.
6135, which is the reg that I just read.
So they need, so Alpha 1 says they need an endorsement, right?
Yes.
They're not doing an ATP, so we don't care about that. They
Alpha
need
2.
Proper ID, right?
Yeah, that's the Alpha 3.
Okay. So that's all they really need to take the test.
Yes, it says photograph, signature, date of birth.
Yep. So this
Other
is
than
an
ATP.
endorsement and a government issued photo ID. That's all they need to take the test. All right, so let's go to the next one. How long is a knowledge test score? How long is a knowledge test result good for?
24 months.
You had a student that just got caught cheating on a knowledge test. And the proctor has informed the FAA. And the FAA is probably going to pass down judgment in not such a good way that they can do that. If the FAA does revoke whatever they have, say they revoke their student pilot certificate or whatever, how long would the person have to wait before they could reapply
1 year.
everything? What'd you say?
1 year.
1 year. There you go.
Just like the DUI thing.
Yep. You're getting ready to send student A. You're getting ready to send someone to a test, to a practical test, a check ride. In general, what are the general requirements or prerequisites to go take a practical test? And there's a couple of them. So take your time, go over one at a time.
You need your alpha one, which is your 61-139 for every practical test. Yeah, it's 61-139. And then you also need all the requirements for each, whichever part. If it's private, then you need all the requirements. And
6139 and just go right down the list. Don't look at it. Remember, don't look at these regs as Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, 1, 2, 3, I, double I, triple I. Look at it as check boxes. Completely get away the numbers and just do a check box. Does that apply to you? Yes. Have you done it? Yes. Check. Okay.
Okay.
So go right down the list and tell me all the prerequisites in 39.
Okay, so they have to pass the required knowledge test within the preceding 24 months. Within the 60 months, practical test for applicants who are going for airline ATP. So that's not us. Present the knowledge test at the time of application for the practical test, if the knowledge test was required, which probably was. Have satisfactorily accomplished the required training and attained the aeronautical experience prescribed by this part for the rating sought. And if applying for practical tests with flight time accomplished.
Anytime you see that 150, 160 stuff, you can just stay away from that. All ATP junk.
Okay.
So, and that's all self-endorsed.
Hold at least a third class medical certificate.
Yep.
Meet the age requirement.
Yep.
Have an endorsement.
Yep.
And receive and log the training time within the 2 preceding calendar months.
And number 7.
Have a completed and signed application form or IACRA.
Oh, not there you go. So there's your 7 items there that you must have done prior to taking the test. So, asking some of these questions are sometimes very simplistic, but they can sometimes be rather difficult. Like if I say, does the student need to have their knowledge test results in the exam? Like, do they have to bring them to the practical test? And then the applicant would tell me yes. And I'd say, prove it to me. Show me where it says that. And then, of course, they would open up the regs. They'd go to 6139, and they would look at Alpha 2. And so it shows little small things like that. That's the difference between being prepared and just having enough rote memorization to get by in this check ride.
So the answer is, so Alpha 2, present the knowledge test report at the time of application for the practical test. Yeah, okay. So yeah, the answer is yes.
Yep, and that's the reason why there, so blibbity blah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. Good job, you're doing good.
Thanks.
I have actually seen, we're almost getting ready to take a little small break here. We're going to pause here and refresh our coffee here in a second at the top of the hour. I have seen examiners ask questions about foreign pilot certification. So we will talk a little bit about foreign pilot certification and the regs that apply to that. If you have a flight training received from a flight instructor not certificated by the FAA. So here's the deal. Here's the question that you, this is the 6141 question. The question the examiner may ask is this: you have a student who come to you. They did almost every bit of their training in Mexico with a Mexican instructor or someone who's accredited under by the Mexican government there to do flight training. They're not a US based flight instructor. Does that training time count towards their private pilot certificate in the US if it wasn't signed by United States CFI? So here's the deal. It's a very short reg. Why don't you read through it and then give me the answer? Ready, go.
I'm going to read it out loud or just to myself?
Oh, just read it to yourself, sir.
Is Mexico ICAO?
They are.
Then yes, so long as they're meeting the requirements put forth in this section.
That is correct. Now, one thing that you have to understand is this. Even though you're not part of the Mexican FAA, whatever they call that, or Canadian FAA or anything else, right?
Yeah.
You have to understand that some countries' rules and regulations are not the same as the United States. Like, for instance, some countries the definition of cross country is not the same.
Our definition of cross country isn't the same, depending on where you're looking.
Yeah, which is that's a whole nother conversation for us there. But that's something that you want to make sure that you understand. If the person has logged that training, were the airports more than 50 nautical miles apart, blibbity blah.
Yeah.
So you have to go in there and really kind of dissect it and see what was going on. And it's kind of hard for you because you may not be able to read some of the language if it's written in a foreign language.
Yeah. That's 100% right.
Even though English is the primary language internationally, it's not for logbooks. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was trying to prove one time, I was looking at these logbooks for this Mitsubishi MU2, and it actually had flown over in Japan. I couldn't read any of the logbook stuff. I couldn't tell you whether or not some of the inspections that were time-sensitive inspections have been completed on it. You know, some of the time-sensitive airframe inspections have been completed on it. So I wasn't able to give an answer. A mechanic and I were looking at this airplane to try to see if it was airworthy or what work it needed to be done on it for a pre-buy. Anyway, kind of weird stuff. And
yeah, I'd have a lot better luck with Spanish than Japanese, I think, but neither one would be ideal. Yeah,
well, here's a cool thing. As long as the words are written really cool, you know, Google Translate, you can just hold your phone up to it take a picture mode in Google Translate, and it'll actually translate it. As long as the words are written very clearly, it'll translate it.
That's AI. It's crazy.
Man, cool stuff. And all right, let's keep going on. 6143, almost everything in that is also listed in the corresponding PTS or ACS. But in this particular reg here, the biggest thing is this is like how the instructor or how the applicant would know what the DPE is supposed to be doing. So this is kind of like how the DPE should conduct the practical test, or how the examiner, which is the more proper way to say it, how the examiner should conduct the practical test.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's anything in here that's test worthy. Let me see if there's. Yeah, just when they can issue a discontinuance, what constitutes a pass and a failure is basically what that says. So, not too many stump the chump things in that one. 6145 can get pretty deep if you are flying some crazy equipment. But I guess some common questions would be like, can a DPE do a test in a military airplane? And that's not applicable to you. This is not for training. This is only practical test stuff. So, but it may be that you're working with the students who either owns this or is going to be using this type of aircraft or airplane, and you have to help them get this stuff prepared. So that way they arrive to the practical test prepared. That is your responsibility as well as a CFI. So if you go down to Bravo, or actually go down to Charlie, that may be something that is pertaining to you. Have you ever seen any of the beach products that have a throw over yoke?
I've seen pictures and videos of it, but I haven't in person seen one.
Could you use that on the check ride?
Yes, as long as you deem that it was safe for operation or something along those
Yep.
lines.
And that's what it says right there in Charlie.
Yeah, can be conducted safely.
Yeah.
There's another section on that too, though. Echo, maybe.
Yep. Here's something that actually just came up recently with me, or I say with me, and it's something that I recently had to talk with an examiner about. If you go down to Delta 2, so I got feedback from an examiner stating that the examiner had put the sunscreen into the windscreen while the person was flying on an instrument check ride, because the person kept cheating, kept looking underneath their foggles. So the examiner took the sunscreen and placed it up into the window area, blocking the student from being able to see outside of the outside of the airplane. So is that legal?
Device that prevents the applicant from having visual reference outside the aircraft does not prevent the examiner. So if the examiner couldn't see out that aircraft either, then yeah, it was illegal.
So the examiner stated he had perfect visibility. So what do you say then? You're saying ops check good. If you're telling me you could see, I wasn't in the airplane,
Yeah.
your eye level at where you were, where you had your head, I don't know. So the examiner said he could see, so be it, good to go. But the student had a problem with it. Of course, the student had a problem with it because the student was cheating so much that the examiner had to resort to other ways to keep the student from cheating.
Yeah.
Anyway, 6147, what is the role of the examiner on the check ride?
He's a non-person, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
He kind of doesn't exist. He's just there for evaluation purposes.
He's there for all that until the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
And the FAA will hold their feet to the fire. But anyway, yeah, they're not a required, they're not a crew member. They're not logging the time, which is crazy.
Yeah, you guys didn't log the time? That's huh.
Nope.
But you have certain requirements and certain amounts of time required.
We have to get that
maintain.
outside of, we cannot use any check ride time for our PIC requirement on a yearly basis. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I guess it makes sense because the people should primarily be flying more than flight instructions.
So that's
interesting.
That's 47. It's about the top of the hour now. It's 9:02. Let's take about 5 minutes. I'm just going to go get my coffee. I'm going to pause the recording here, and then we'll get back on it when I come back. Okay, so here's the next one. We're on 6149. You are at your school one day, and one of the students just took a check ride and did not pass. Their instructor is not around to re-sign them off for their private pilot check ride that they just received a notice of disapproval on. Without ever flying with this person before, can you sign them off for the recheck? Go out and fly with them and sign them off for the recheck?
So did they fail based on the knowledge portion or on the flight portion?
The flight.
Then no, because it says Alpha 2, the endorsement must be given by an authorized instructor who gave the applicant the additional training.
Yeah, you're going to go out and give the additional training.
Yeah. So if you go out and do the additional training, then yes, you can sign them off.
Okay, good. On this test that you're going for, you get into the flight portion and you're doing stalls, and the examiner finds you unsatisfactory in the teaching of stalls. When you come back to the recheck, if there is stalls or spins located on your notice of disapproval, what must you be prepared to do when you come back to the recheck? This is only for the CFI.
You bring an airplane that's approved for stalls or spins, and the instructor, or not the instructor, the examiner has to test you on that.
Correct. Good deal. 6151, this is something that is, you could ask incredibly a large amount of questions on here because there is so much stump the chump information in 6151. But I'll just ask you some of the standard questions first, and then we can get into the weeds a little bit later. I just finished instructing someone on a flight. I said, go ahead and give me your logbook and I'll sign it. And they'd say to me, I don't own a logbook. This is my first lesson. I don't own, should I buy a logbook? And then you're like, yeah, you should probably buy a logbook. And he goes, well, I don't have a logbook right now. Can you just write down on this piece of paper what we did? So what would you need to write down from a legal standpoint, according to the CFRs? What would you actually have to write down on that piece of paper?
Date, flight time. Well, so 6151 Bravo 1, I through.
That's good enough. That's good enough.
Okay.
You and I are out flying around in my plane. And while we're flying around, I say, would you like to fly for a little while? And you say, sure, I'd like to fly for a little while. So you take the controls and you're flying around. And after about 30 minutes, give the controls back. So on this hour flight, you flew for 30 minutes. Do you have to log that flight time?
No, you don't have to log anything if you don't want to, except for the requirements that you need to get a pilot certificate.
There you go. That's what I want to know. So it's to get a pilot certificate, and then there's something else that you have to log.
For currency.
Yeah, currency recency, good to go.
Yeah.
Here's the part where we can start getting into the weeds pretty thick, which is logging, pilot, and command time. So one of the things that I want to just tell you on this is don't get confused between logging PIC and acting PIC. And let me give this to you in a scenario, and we'll work through the scenario.
Under the hood time, is that what you're?
Yeah,
Or, sorry, go ahead.
Scenario right now. So here's the scenario. You're complex rated. You have a person who just come to you. They just passed their private pilot check ride last week. They want to get checked out in the Mooney at the flight school that the flight school has, or an Aero or whatever. I don't care. It's a complex retractable twin. And I mean, a complex retractable single engine, sorry. So you have a complex endorsement. They do not have a complex endorsement. So here's the question. Can the person log PIC on these training flights with you?
No.
I already told you it's a trick question. Now, I don't think I told you it's a trick question, but so the answer is yes, they can log PIC. Because they're appropriately rated. That is still an airplane, single engine land. They're appropriately rated to fly that airplane. They can log PIC. What they cannot do is act.
Okay.
What
So
would
they can
need in their logbook in order to act as PIC?
They would need their complex endorsement.
That's correct. But they can log PIC.
What? Okay.
Isn't that crazy?
Because they're appropriately rated, because they have a single engine rating. So you could log tailwheel time also. It's the same thing. And then high performance and high altitude, they're all the same. You can log PIC time, but you can't act as PIC. So if you can't act as PIC, then you can't log PIC though. Because don't you have to be acting as PIC to log?
No,
okay.
Acting PIC is a who's in control, who has the final authority as to the safety of this flight.
Okay.
Pilot in command does. You can't act as pilot in command without being properly rated, without being properly endorsed. But logging pilot in command, if you go down to, let's see what, let's see, logging pilot in command, a sport pilot, recreational, private, commercial, or airline transport pilot may log pilot in command time or flights, except when logging flight time under 6159. We don't care about that. Just completely draw a line through that. And we want to just pick up the sentence where it says when. So the sport, recreational, private, commercial, or ATP may log pilot in command flight time for flights when the pilot is the sole manipulator of the controls of an aircraft for which the pilot is rated for that category and class. Log pick. It's so incredibly confusing. This is probably one of the more confusing ones because where it says except when logging flight time under 6159 Charlie and then comma. So a lot of people will say when they're reading this, they'll go, well, that doesn't apply to me because it says except when, they're doing the ATP stuff. And then you're like, yeah, but you got to understand English grammar and understand that this is a multi-part sentence.
Yeah, I guess I was just assuming that they weren't appropriately rated without the endorsement.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But it is. If you go and if you go up to 6139, go ahead back to 6139, I mean 6131, sir, sorry. And if you go down to the Delta, and it says to serve as the pilot in command of an aircraft.
Mhm.
And to serve means to act. Limitations on operating an aircraft as the pilot in command.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Category, class, and type rating for aircraft to be flown. Receive training required in this part.
And if you go to Echo, it says no person may act as pilot in command.
Right, there it is.
Plain language regs, right? Yeah, crazy.
Okay. This is good. This is really good. This is weird. Weird stuff that I wouldn't have known without this.
Absolutely. It sure is weird. Sure is. So when may a person log night?
They can log night from 1 hour after. No, from sunset to sunrise. But I feel like you're going in order, so it's got to be right here, and I should look at that to verify. Logging night vision goggles, logging flight time. I don't know why I thought I would have this highlighted. Okay. So night takeoff and landing experience. No, if logging, it should be sunset to sunrise.
That's what it is. So
Where does it say that though?
6157. I skipped ahead a little bit, sorry. But I wanted to kind of show you how we can be in this reg and talk about something that's related to this, but not related to this.
Mhm.
All right. Really, in this one, here's where we can get in the weeds on this as well. If we go to Delta 6151D,
6151.
6151D, yeah.
Okay.
Is there any time in which a pilot can log solo? So in here it says the solo has to be the sole occupant of the airplane. Is there a time in which you can log solo, but you're really not solo?
Maybe during a check ride.
Yeah, you're not logging solo in that.
Okay. No. I feel like this is a trick question, but
it is a trick question. And the reason for is because if you go to some of the commercial regs, so the commercial regs says that you can log, you have to have 10 hours of solo time or
with an authorized instructor.
10 hours of conducting the duties of PIC with an authorized instructor on board. So here's the question, stump the chump. Do you log that 10 hours of flight time that you did with that instructor as solo?
I wouldn't.
Because it's not, you can't.
Yeah.
Because it's 6151 Delta says you have to be the only SOB, solo on board, solo on board. So if you're not the only SOB there, you can't. So what you would have to do as an instructor, you actually have to take one of those blank columns that's in the logbook, and you have to write something in there like supervised PIC /solo, something like that, and then keep track of those particular hours that you did that.
So So while we're on that, Verl had sent you a question the other day while we were studying. And I believe you if you're telling me that is what it is, but it doesn't make sense that for 129 doesn't make sense in my head. But for that reg you were just talking about, I guess it's alpha 4 that you have to do your 10 hours and your cross country either with an authorized instructor or solo, and you can't mix the two. Why is that?
Because I'm going to say it again. It's just the way that the reg reads. If you just look at the plain language reading of it, it's just the word or.
Okay. Yeah. So because it doesn't say and or.
Yep.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yep. And it's just that or, that's where if you wrote a letter to the legal office and you asked them about that, they would respond. They would definitely put that in the response. They would say the plain language reading of the regs dictates with the word or blibbity blah. So, and if I'm not mistaken, I think there's actually a letter of interpretation on that already. I'll look that up when we get off and send it to you if I can find it.
You got a crazy amount of knowledge in your head, man.
Well, this is all I do, Sterling. I suck at everything else in life. I don't do
I don't believe you, but
I can't do plumbing, electrical, or heating and air. A lawyer. I mean, I can't do anything else. This is my trade. This is the only thing I do. A lot of people have told me that, but you're just the fact this is just the only thing I do, man. I'm really kind of just a niche person.
Well, you're very, very good at this. I'm sure you're good at other things just fine too, when you're being humble. But the fact that there's a letter of interpretation over here and over here, it's cool.
It's kind of like learning in a plane as well. I've got a lot of time in the airplanes by myself. The hard part about flying single pilot is that you don't know when you're messing up until you've already messed up. You don't have somebody there going, hey, what are you doing? You just steadily just booking along. And then you realize, oh no, I should not have done that. I should not have departed. But then, when you get back on the ground, then it's like you get the same situation happens again, and then you're like, I'm not doing that. And then someone else may actually end up doing something, and then you're like, dude, don't do that. Let me tell you the story. And then
learning as a result of experience.
Well, there's another one that's a little bit better, and that is a good FOIS thing, that learning is a result of experience. And I forget what it is. I can Google it after the call's over with, but it is an aviation proverb or whatever saying that says experience is one of the best teachers, but in aviation, or anyway, making mistakes or something like that. But and then it goes on to say that, but making mistakes in aviation usually results in death.
Yeah.
So we can't really we want to know about it because there's nobody there to tell the story. So we have to be very.
Well, the NTSB shows up to make their own form of the story.
Oh, dude, I know for the NTSB, all I've got to do is write the same blurb that's written in every single NTSB report.
Yeah.
Pilot error. With a bunch of other crap in there that the engineers start up.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know. I say it like that. I don't think I'm pretty sure that their job is very heavily concentrated on fact finding and what they've seen from the past. That's why they go out there and wreck airplanes on purpose and stuff so they can see what it looks like. Not a lot of other things in 6151. Probably another thing would be, is there ever a time, and we're looking at paragraph F, is there ever a time in which a person like in your airplane, in your Cherokee 140, can you log second in command time in that airplane?
No,
You're not
because you're not a required.
enough.
What?
Watch the examiner's face more. You can tell a lot by context clues of the person's face. Is there a time where you can log second in command?
The answer is no, right?
The answer is yes.
That's what.
There is a time you can do that. When would be a time in that airplane that two pilots, and don't say flight instruction, when is it a time that in that Cherokee 140 that two pilots have to be in that plane?
If one is under the hood.
That is correct.
But you log second in command time for that? I thought you were able to log PIC.
So here's the thing. The safety pilot has the option, based off what's going on, to either log pick or sick.
Okay, so that's based off what's going on, but there's no reason that you would want to log second in command time, really. There's no benefit to it.
From a legality standpoint, it's really truly, who's acting second in command and who's acting pilot in command.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about logging right now. This benefit, what I'm talking to you here is about acting. You're acting as pilot in command, you're acting as second in command, or you're logging pilot in command, logging second in command. Says a person may log second in command time only for that flight time during which that person occupies a crew member station in an aircraft that requires more than one pilot by the aircraft type certificate, holds the appropriate class, serves as second in command and operations conducted in accordance with that 135. We don't care about that. When a second pilot is not
required under the regulations.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as long as that person's in there and they're doing something that is required crew member, they can log second in command. But most people log the pilot in command because you can log it either way. There are several times in aviation where you can do the same instance classifies more than one occasion. Classifies in more than one event. You can do it like this, or you can do it like this, or you can do it like this. There's several things. This is just one of them. Mm-hmm. One or the other.
Yeah, that's a complex little area to maneuver in, because it's like three regs that it refers to. It goes to 6131 and then this reg 6157, then 91109, I think, is where it states that the person's required by regulation.
Yeah. Show enough. You have a student pilot that's getting ready to solo. What documentation must they have in their possession? And where do you see that? How do you know that that's what they should have in their possession while they're soloing?
Well, I have to have given them Tim Loves Bacon.
Oh, no. I'm talking about documentation, not endorsements.
Okay. Well, they need the same. Hang on.
Paragraph India.
50. What are we at? What were we on?
Still in 51, yeah.
51. Okay, presentation required doc. Pilot certificate, medical certificate, logbook, or any other record required by this part for inspection under a reasonable request. So student pilot must carry the following: India 2, pilot logbook, student pilot certificate, and any other record.
So one of those things that when I'm writing my pre-solo written test, and I need to tell the students, like for instance, my pre-solo written test, I don't do a lot of stump the chump. I'm like, man, you got to know this. So I actually write this in the pre-solo written test. I say, what documents are you legally required to have on board? And then in parentheses, I put 6151 India. Because I want the student to know that I'm not just saying this. And I don't want them to get home and do this test or take the test in front of me or whatever, and to be completely stumped. I want them to be able to say, look, this is the reason why you have to know it, and this is where it's located. So when you're writing your pre-solo written test, you don't have to write it like it's some end of course exam to get out of college. No, it's not writing a doctoral thesis. You know, you're just trying to promote thought process here.
Yeah.
I put POH page numbers. I put reg numbers. I make it where they can go right to it and read and get the answer. But I've already talked about it with them in class before. This is not the first time I'm doing it. So they need to know that, because they need to understand that if they get stopped by the FAA and they don't have this documentation on them, that's a problem. And it's not my problem as the instructor. It's their problem as the student, because they have to have this, this information.
And you have the pre-solo written test showing that you told them that they need it. I guess that wouldn't matter, but
Yeah. Now you're getting on to another stump the chump. How long after they complete that solo written test and you correct it to 100%, how long do you have to keep that test?
that one's 3 years, right?
It doesn't say.
Okay.
It doesn't say. So here's the question. How long do you think that test should be available to anyone that should ask for it?
3 years sounds like a good number to me. Match up with everything else.
I think once they completed their pilot exam, you could burn it, shred it.
Okay.
I don't want that stuff floating around. I do want it around in case the FAA comes in and says, hey, you got a student out there soloing? Yeah. You have was he qualified? Yeah. Did he have his pre-written solo? Yeah, it's right here. But afterwards, after you get your pilot certificate, who cares about the solo test? According to 6189 instructor records, doesn't say anything about it. And 6187 Bravo 2, it doesn't say anything. Or Bravo 1, it doesn't say anything about it. Bravo 1, Bravo 2, Bravo 2. 6187 Bravo, it doesn't say anything about it. So, yeah, maybe there should be, but it's not. Okay, the 6151, we're done. Sorry about that. We don't care about 52 because it's ultralight vehicles, so we're going to skip that. Oh, you know what? That actually may be a good question. God, that would really be far out, you know, the instructor, an examiner, excuse me, to really dig into that. A person comes to you and they have 1,000 hours in the ultralights. Can they use any of that flight time towards their private pilot training? And I'll give you a chance to look over that before you answer. And if you need to ask me any questions in order to answer that question, you're more than welcome to.
Okay, well, so and this wow. So they're using their ultralight time to get a private pilot rating.
Yeah. Yeah, I bought my ultralight about 4 years ago. I think it was probably back in 2017. And I've logged about 1,000 hours in it since that time.
Okay, document and log aeronautical experience and according to provisions, obtain aeronautical experience and category classification. I don't even know what category an ultralight is. Is that? I mean, I kind of know what they look like, but I don't know much about ultralights.
Yeah, so it's not a plane.
It's a weight shift, right?
It's the ultra.
Okay.
They don't even qualify into any of the things that we're talking about. So it's not like not considered an airplane.
Okay, so no.
Like, and they're like, that's an airplane. You're like, no, that's an ultralight.
Well, the only other reg that I could maybe reference is 6163, right? But yeah,
Classroom.
I'm not sure. You got me. You stumped the jump.
Does a person need a pilot certificate to fly an ultralight?
It says before January 31st, 2012, a person may use aeronautical experience to obtain an ultralight to meet the requirements of the following certificates and ratings under this part: sport pilot, flight instructor, sport pilot, or private pilot certificate with weight shift control.
Okay, so can I use the time?
For single engine private pilot?
Yep.
No.
Very good. You've answered the question.
Okay. That was painful.
Yep. Okay.
Writing no next to that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny if you go down to Charlie 3, you know, how they look at ultralights, where it says obtain the aeronautical experience in a category and class of vehicle corresponding to the rating or privilege sought. Doesn't even say aircraft, just says vehicle. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. You just your student came in and they said, sorry, I'm late today. I just got back from a medical appointment. The doctor said I have kidney stones. Would that affect the flight today or the training with the person?
So you kind of have to make that decision as a pilot, as pilot in command. I would say yes, because that person might be unable to meet the requirements to safely operate during that flight.
Yeah. So the problem is that where it says 6153A1, where the person, while that person knows or has a reason to know of any medical condition that would make the person unable to meet the requirements of the medical certificate request area for pilot certificate, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is that not everybody knows everything. So anytime at all, a student tells you anything medical oriented, you need to immediately issue a training timeout.
Mm-hmm.
Let's stop. Let's go and see. Kidney stones would be a game stopper. So you really need to stop there, get some type of guidance from the AME or the local air surgeon, regional air surgeon or something, and say, look, I'm a local CFI or I'm a CFI. I'm training this person. They just told me they had kidney stones. Do I need to even continue flying with this person? And they'll say, well, sure. All they just need to do is, go through the doctor treatment. You can still train with them. They just can't do anything that require a medical certificate in order for them to exercise privileges.
Mm-hmm.
56. Let's talk about 6156. You've just completed a flight review. What do you have to put in the student's logbook?
You have to write in their logbook as required logbook entries for whatever flight time. If they pass the flight review, after you give them 1 hour of ground and at least 1 hour of ground and 1 hour of flight training, then you can write in their logbook that constitutes a flight review now. And
that's what I wanted to hear. So you got to sign for the flight and then give the endorsement.
Yeah.
Good. how would you conduct a flight review? Is there any guidance for you as a flight instructor?
Yeah, well, there's this right here. Flight review consists of a minimum of 1 hour of flight training and 1 hour of ground in
I
6156.
want more guidance. I want very specific guidance.
Review of maneuvers and procedures at the discretion of the person giving the review.
No. AC 6198.
Oh, I think I have that one.
Eureka. And there's also the flight review video that I have on Patreon as well. It'll walk you through step by step how to do it.
Yeah. I've got so many papers over here that, like I said, I just got back home, so they're not organized.
No worries. Just make sure that when you start talking about a flight review, you would say, well, I'm going to use my advisory circular 6198.
6198.
And I'm going to conduct the flight review holistically by that. And that's like a total thing too. You know, that's another conversation. That's a 30-minute or an hour conversation with us. But that particular advisory circular actually tells you step by step what to do. Even prior to meeting with them, it has like a form they can fill out, kind of tells like what kind of flying they've been doing. So that way you can tailor their flight review to them.
Mm-hmm.
And just remember that a flight review is not a check ride. It's just a review. It's meant to kind of really, like as a flight instructor, if you really wanted to go above and beyond, that's a selling point for you. Like if you did somebody's flight review for them, that would be your way to sell the skill. So that way you can come back and have a repeat customer. Mm-hmm. So it's very important that anything you do with anybody you fly with, you're always selling yourself for the next visit.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there any other way besides doing a flight review that I can actually satisfy the requirements of 6156?
Yeah, if you do a check ride, practical test.
What else?
Well, okay. Flight review, logbook endorsed by the authorized instructor. So you're going to pass any of the following. You not accomplish the flight review required by this section. So a pilot proficiency check or practical test conducted by an examiner, practical test for the issuance of a flight instructor certificate, an additional rating on the flight instructor certificate, renewal of flight instructor certificate.
So it's in echo is what you need to be telling me. What is
accomplished one or more of the phases of FAA sponsored pilot proficiency award program. So that's a wings program.
That's it. Now, again, that's another good point, a selling point for you, because with a flight review, it's just one flight, 1 hour, done every 24 months. With the wings program, or what is also known as the FAA's pilot proficiency awards program, you are selling to the customer an hour flight basically every quarter. If they do 3 flights with you, and they don't have to be any particular time, but if they do 3 flights with you within 12 months, automatic flight review. So
interesting.
Yeah, and not a lot of people know about it, but I'm telling you, man.
They're really trying to promote this wings course thing. They're really. It's
been this way since 1993, but the FAA does a crappy job of selling this program to people.
Huh.
Let me just tell you.
I've heard about it more from you and your videos than anyone.
Dude, I used to kill it. When I first became a flight instructor, man, I crushed it. At the end of my first year as an instructor, I was making $75,000 plus as a CFI. I was killing it because I knew everything like this.
I'm going to keep talking to you because that sounds good.
But you know what? It's at first there was a lot of trial and error, but I have a pretty good business head on me, and I'm like, man, how can I? The biggest thing is that you don't see people using business technique in flight instruction. Like
Yeah.
dude, there's used car salesman techniques I use. There's like Hilton brand, Disney brand stuff. I use everything. I've been to the Hilton School of Business. I've been to Disney School of Business. When I was a flight school owner, I really researched my trade, man. And I'm going to tell you, I used this wings program. Oh my God. I was probably doing literally 1 or 2 a day in conjunction with other flights, because
Yeah.
I sold this program like crazy. Like,
No, I like everything you've said about it. I like it a lot. I'm going to be using it.
anyway,
That's really cool.
yeah, this can staying busy in flight training is pretty easy. There's so many tools out there that's free. I hate that about this trade. I rarely give things away for free because I know what it took me to get here. But do you know almost every single site that you go on, you look at any other trade, nobody's out there just giving trade information away. Oh man, you know, people like you and Vern, no, Vern,
Merle,
Burl, God dang it.
you were close.
Yeah, thank you. That go out there that want to be proficient, they'll pay what the person's worth. But I vowed a long time ago, I said, I will never charge less than the person that gets paid to fix my weed eater.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
what
I remember you saying that in one of your videos.
For what I have invested in this, no way. And then, man, you know, when I give flight instruction, I'm $125 an hour for flight instruction. But nobody, once I tell them how much it is, very slim shot that they'll say, sure, I'll go flying with you.
Yeah. Well, and you want to weed the people out that aren't serious
That's
about
right.
it. So
that's because, you know what?
then it doesn't waste your time.
You're not interviewing me. You're not interviewing me for me to work. I'm interviewing you for me to work with you.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to spend my time with somebody. Like, for instance, if when I first worked with Verl, I had an interview session with him. Like, this is debating on whether or not I want to work with you. If Verl would not have did the same thing with you, you and I would have had the same conversation, 20-30 minute conversation where I just ask you questions. But I don't work with anybody because I don't want to. I don't want to have my record tarnished. I don't want to waste my time. I've got so many stories, man, of just people not having time, but we need to get on with our session here. But just really quick, there's this one guy, his name's Blake Purvis, very successful pilot. But man, during this pilot training, I must have I knew this guy had a learning deficiency. He just didn't learn traditionally. Man, I had spent so much time in his initial aerodynamics lesson. And I had spent 2 or 3 days like prepping my lesson plan and knowing what I was going to go over. He came in on time for the lesson. He sat at the front of the classroom, just one-on-one. I'm at the whiteboard. And for an hour and 20 minutes, man, I'm killing it. I'm crushing it. Like the Wright brothers would have been in the back. I mean, it would have been like all the aviation people, the Kings would have been back there just applauding. They'd be like, man, that's a great aerodynamics class. Like I killed it, right? And this guy never broke eye contact with me. And I'm like, man, I'm teaching. I'm like, I'm getting through. Like, oh my God, this is why I do this, because nobody wants to work with this kid. He's already tried to go to a big box school. They kicked him out because they said he'd never be a pilot. And I'm crushing it here. I'm killing it. I got finished and I said, all right, Blake, all that makes sense. He goes, yeah. I said, do you have any questions? He goes, yeah, I got a question. I go, what's the question? He goes, can a 747 pull a train?
Did he really say that?
And I don't know.
Swear?
To this day, I still pick on him about it. But it was at that point, though.
So can a 747 pull a train?
It was at that point that I realized that everything that I had said
Just went in and out.
in my mind, the way I'm seeing it is like completely going across, like you can see the sound waves just going right past his head. Nothing's going into his ear. And then what he's seeing is like fucking butterflies and birds and shit, and rainbows. Like, what he's seeing in his vision. And I'm like, you didn't see shit that I was seeing.
He's thinking about Thomas the Train.
Nothing. Like, you're thinking about hooking a 747 to a train, and nothing I'm saying up here is, God, I was just so angry. But I just said, well, when you get ready, come back. There's no rush in putting yourself back on the schedule, because I was pissed, but I never was mean.
Yeah.
I just said, but hopefully you got something out of today, and we'll see you again in the next few days. Just whenever you're ready, just put yourself on the schedule. And I never worked like that. That's my used car technique. Before a person left, I would always say to them, I'd look at my schedule and I go, I have next Tuesday at 8 a.m. or next Thursday at 7 p.m. Which one works best for you? Like, yep. I would never give them an option to not come back.
Yeah, you give them a morning and a night, and yeah.
I would just.
I've done some sales courses too, and I've done some different things over the years. I sold life insurance for a while. I have my real estate license for a long time.
That's a good technique. There's a lot of life insurance things that are really, really good.
Dude, it's hard sales. That is like the hardest sales I've ever done, because you're trying to make people cry, essentially. I mean, if you're successful, you're getting them to think about their death and how their family is going to be after they die. It was hardcore sales.
Well, I mean, that's what would make you a good Cirrus aircraft salesperson, because your blanket that you were selling on the life insurance was the policy, and the blanket that you're selling on that Cirrus is that parachute.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. They sell a lot of death and a lot of numbers and how many times the parachute has been deployed that save lives.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing. But that's what the guy needs for his wife to sign off on the purchase.
Yeah, right.
Because the guy's not seeing anything. He's just like, Cirrus, I can buy a Cirrus? I'm badass.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna get the Cirrus. And then he's like, well,
I wish they have retractable landing gear. They don't have a model with retractable. I wish they did.
They'll probably never have one. There's a thing about doing maintenance and building a new airplane, and it's called tooling, TOOLING, and it's exactly what you probably think it means. Anytime that you make an airplane, the FAA has to come down and look at your shop where you make the plane, and the FAA has to physically approve every single tool, every machine, every component that's used to manufacture that airplane. So it would be very, very expensive and very time consuming for Cirrus to go in right now and change up their tooling. They'd have to create another wing of their shop or find another building, create the mechanics of it, create the machines that would manufacture this stuff or put it together. It's not as easy as what everybody would think. Let's talk about a couple more things, because we're getting on, encroaching on 2 hours here.
Yeah.
No problem. Just a couple more stuff here, and then we'll be gone through basically the per se regs, and then the only thing left would be an endorsement kind of things. Okay.
Yeah.
Recent flight experience 6157. So do my takeoff and landings have to be to a full stop if I'm trying to haul passengers during the day?
No.
Okay. You know what? Another way to answer these things, Sterling, is to say, well, in accordance with 6157, no.
Okay. That sounds better than no.
Yeah. And then another thing too is that it's not where, if you just know that the night, the 6-6 hit for instrument, the takeoff and landings to a full stop, all that stuff is all in 57. You don't have to know like the paragraph. You just say, oh, that's in 57. What about a flight review? That's 56.
56.
Can I operate without, if something's wrong with me? That's 53. What if I want to add a category class? That's 63. So, you know, if you can know it like that, it's much better that you can know exactly where to go to turn to get it. And of course, the tabbing out, what you're doing now is the first initial part of that, because you're not in it every day. Like
Yeah.
I'm in it every single day. I'm in it looking at the stuff every single day. Anywho, 57, that's basically all that is for VFR. The night stuff, blibbity blob. You don't have to worry about instrument experience, and you don't have to worry about a flight simulator. When you get your CF double I, we'd have to come back and go back to that as well.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh yeah.
And of course, that's a very long reg, but not a lot of things in there that apply to you. 6158, we don't care about because you're not a jet jock. So 56 is review, 57 is currency, and 58 is your yearly captain review in a jet. So we don't care about 58. 59 really kind of speaks for itself. But if for some reason that you falsify any of those items that's in that header and the FAA revokes your stuff, how long do you have to wait to get back to go back into the thing? It's always
1 year.
Yeah, always. Even though it doesn't say it here, you have to go back to the early part of part 61 and look at their year.
It's pretty much always 1 year.
Yeah, there's always a 12-month wait. 6160, change of address. I know it has an email here. Don't ever email anything to the FAA. This is 2021, for Christ's sake, stop emailing stuff. So just go to the Airman's Registry and change your email address or change your mailing address. But just remember, as a pilot, you have to change if you ever move, you have to change it on IACRA. You have to change it on FASafety.gov. You have to change it on your Airman's Registry. You have to change it on medexpress.faa.gov. So there's more than one spot you have to change your address. It doesn't encompass everything.
And you're supposed to do all of those within 30 days.
You only must change it in the registry. You don't need to do it with the other ones in 30 days.
So the other ones, like when I go in IACRA and get a new rating,
Correct. Yeah.
And then when I get a medical on
Yep.
MedExpress,
Yep.
and then what was the other one that you said? The Airman's Registry, those two, and then what was the
FAA safety.gov, so the Wings website.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, you just go on there and do it. And then if you want to, they can mail you an updated certificate with your new address on there. It just costs you $2.
Okay.
6163. Let's just go right into Bravo. So you are having a person come to you that is, and they're already a rotorcraft pilot and they're actively flying, and they want to add on, so they're a private rotorcraft and then want to add on a private airplane. What would you need to do? And then you would just go through the steps there that are in Bravo. So here's the questions for that. Does the person need to take a knowledge test?
No.
Why?
6163 Bravo 4 states they don't need the knowledge test as long as it's private to private or commercial or whatever.
Yeah, so it's powered to powered.
Powered to powered.
Yeah. So if I told you that it was a glider pilot coming to you wanting to get their airplane, and I said, they're already a private pilot glider, do they need to take private pilot airplane? Now, what would your answer be?
Yes, they need to take a knowledge test.
The knowledge test, yep. So power to powered, you got to take a test, no test. Power to powered, no test. Unpowered to powered, you got to take a test. Okay. So it says here under Bravo 1, must complete the training and have the applicable aeronautical experience. where can I find the applicable aeronautical experience for a private pilot?
61-109.
Very good. And then if you go in there, it reads just like an audit, right? Yeah, so it reads just like an audit. So why don't we flip on over there and let's look at this audit for the private under 109. So this is where you go down through and the examiner may give you like a pre-filled out. What I would do is I would give you a piece of paper that had a bunch of flight time on it. And I would say, here is what here's what type of flight time your student has, or your whatever. You don't want to confuse the word student with student pilot. It's two different things. Anyway, so I would just give you the flight time, right? And then you would go down through the audit and you would audit me on this. So it says here in paragraph A that it must have 40 hours. So I put down that guy's got 200 hours in rotorcraft. So you can put a check mark next to 40 because it says 40 hours of flight time. But then it says 20 hours of flight training from an authorized instructor. Okay. And 10 hours of solo flight training in the areas of operation listed in 107 Bravo 1. So just to make sure we understand, why don't we go to Bravo 1 and look at 107 Bravo 1 right quick, like, because I want to make sure you understand something. So before I go to Bravo 1, I'm going to look right up in paragraph alpha. It says a person who applies for a private pilot certificate must receive and log ground and flight training from an authorized instructor on the areas of operation of this section that apply to the aircraft category and class rating sought. Must receive and log ground and flight training from authorized instructor on the areas of operation of this section that apply to the aircraft category and class rating sought, which means that you can't overlap a lot of things, but you can overlap some things. Like airspace, you can overlap airspace. It's the same. Weather, that overlaps. So those things are fine. Certain things you can't, like pre-flight preparation. Pre-flight inspection on a rotorcraft is not the same as a plane.
Yeah.
So if I go to Bravo 1, that's literally everything I have to do. But can you tell me, if you look at that list there, does that list look familiar?
What do you mean by that? I don't know.
Well, like for instance, if you look at 1, it says pre-flight preparation. 2.
Oh, you mean like it's the ACS.
It's the ACS, absolutely. So if I need to have very, very specific, like I don't know what to do for pre-flight preparation. How do I know what to do for pre-flight prep? What would I do? Where would I go?
The ACS.
ACS. And that's kind of counterproductive because the Aviation Instructor's Handbook says that the ACS is not a teaching document, it's an assessment tool. However, comma, if you don't know which direction to go, you're not going to be teaching right out of the ACS, but you're going to use that as a guide to make sure that you covered every single thing that the FAA wants them to know about that.
Make sure you're
and
meeting
that's
the
the
standards.
minimum.
Yeah.
This is the minimum. You may teach them that much, but that's the ACS.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go above and beyond. You want to train them to go into the check ride as an A+ candidate. Because if they fall to the D and below, if they fall below a D, they won't pass. If you send them into the check ride with just understanding what's in the ACS, you've literally sent them into the check ride being a D player. That means if they don't know anything that the examiner tests outside of that, they immediately go from D to F. But if you train them as A+ and they falter, they can go down to a B or a C, never get close to failing.
Mm-hmm.
What you are. So you're above and beyond. You're going to walk in there well above what you need to know. Okay. Whatever way you want to label yourself as an A or A+, B or whatever.
Good, because I don't want to fail.
One price, one check ride. Put forth the effort. Do not have to pay for a check ride again. You don't need to do that. Okay.
No, I don't want to do that.
So I know I've got to go over all that stuff there. So if I look back at that aeronautical experience, it says 20 hours of flight training. Do we also call that dual?
Yes.
All right, so 20 hours of dual. And then I have 10 hours of solo. Now, of this part, it says under 6107 Bravo 1 of this part, and the training must include the training, which means that 20 hours that you do with them must include what? What do we need? Let's go right down the list.
3 hours cross country, 3 hours night, 3 hours.
And they have cross country. They have 125 hours of helicopter cross country.
I would want to double check to see what the definition of cross country is for a helicopter versus an airplane. And then for this, it's at least what?
Just read one there. Read the whole, read Alpha 1.
In a single engine airplane.
So it doesn't matter how much they got, right?
Right.
All right.
Right.
So they know we have, you know, you got to do 3 hours of cross country.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you have to do with them?
3 hours of night flight training in a single engine airplane. One cross country over 100 nautical miles in total distance at night. 10 takeoff and landings to full stop at night. 3 hours solely by reference to instruments, including straight and level, constant speed, blah, 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 in a single engine airplane. And then 3 hours prior to the check ride, which is the 6139.
Yeah, so the biggest things you want to make sure you understand on this is every time where it says in a single engine airplane, that means you can't use the rotorcraft time.
Yeah.
So in a single engine airplane, very, very important.
Yeah, if everything for private is single engine, there's a lot more holes in the commercial requirements.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have 3, 3, and 3. And then the last 3 is what?
Check ride prep, 6139.
Can we possibly overlap that and maybe some of this other stuff?
You would have to label it that way when you signed it.
100%. You did good. Just make sure you put it in the remarks section.
Yeah, so it'd be like 61109.
Yep.
Alpha 4.
Yeah, training per 61129 Alpha 4. And then now the solo, what do they need to do in the solo?
5 hours cross country, one flight over 150 miles with one leg straight line distance more than 50 nautical miles, and 3 takeoff and landings to full stop at an airport with a tower.
Okay.
And then you also need to do training as per 61107 Bravo 1 during your solo flight time. So you have to practice the maneuvers on your own that you'd receive training in.
So based off that, here's the question. What would be the minimum amount of airplane time that this applicant would need to have in order to apply for a private pilot airplane practical test add-on?
So you need 3, 3, 3, 3.
And remember, all that 3 is included with the 20.
Okay, so but it says 20 hours of flight training, but doesn't specify in a single engine.
Yeah, well, it kind of does. It says 20 hours of flight training from an authorized instructor in the area of operation listed in 107 Bravo 1, which is single engine.
Okay, so we got 20 hours, 10 hours.
And the training must include at least that.
So 30 hours, is that the answer?
30 hours is the answer. 20 plus 10, 30 hours.
Okay.
Can't send them to a check ride with less than 30. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to do it.
Okay.
A minimum of 30. So if a person walks into your school that you're going to create, right? And they say, I'm a helicopter pilot, I want to get my airplane, what's it going to cost me? Then you're going to say, all right, my airplane cost is 125 an hour wet or dry, whatever you want, multiplied times 30. And then I am however many hours you're going to charge for your ground or CFI in the airplane. You're going to take how many ground hours you're going to give them. If you're going to charge by the bill by the hour, multiply that times your ground rate, multiply your 20 hours with you in the airplane, multiply that times your CFI rate, which may be different. And that's what it would cost you to get this person's certificate at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to tell them you need to plan for this amount, but expect this amount, basically.
That was a cool scenario. I like that one.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so most people don't look at it this way, but here's the rub. If you're flying for a big box school, you don't need to worry about this because they give you the students, you're just out there flying, you don't have any worries. But a situation like yourself, where you're a potential business owner, this stuff, what we're talking about, is how you sell the course. You won't be able to properly sell it if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. How could you sell somebody something if you have no idea what the requirements are?
Yeah, I agree.
Let's go on to the next one. So then you have an additional class. So this person came to you, they did their private, instrument, and then initial commercial multi. And they've been flying around commercially in a multi-engine. But they come back to you and they say, you know what, I needed to get my multi because I'm trying to get a job, but I do want to get my, I have an opportunity to now do some single engine work. So I want to do my single engine add-on to my commercial. So same question here. Do they need a knowledge test for the additional class?
No.
No, that's correct. And then 2, it says, if you look at Charlie 1, I don't know why I said 2, or what I meant the second thing I'm going to ask is, if you look at Charlie 1, it says must have a logbook or training record endorsement from an authorized instructor attesting that the person was found competent in the appropriate aeronautical knowledge areas and proficient in the appropriate areas of operation. So the question I have for you is this: where can I find a list of the appropriate aeronautical knowledge areas for commercial?
61-125.
Very good. And where can I find that they were proficient in the appropriate areas of operation?
61-127 would be flight proficiency.
Correct. However, comma, it says areas of operation. Where else can we find areas of operation? What other books?
The ACS.
ACS. Does the person get tested in all the areas of operation for an additional class?
No.
So in the appropriate areas
required.
Correct. So if an examiner ever tests outside of the appropriate areas of operation on a check ride, is that appropriate for the examiner to do that?
No. That's no.
And where can you tell them that that's not appropriate? You can tell them it's not appropriate in 61-63 Charlie 1, that they can't test outside the appropriate areas on that check ride.
So that's just the required areas?
Yeah, it says the appropriate aeronautical knowledge areas and proficient in the appropriate areas of operation.
Okay.
So it is what it is.
All right.
If a person has a commercial glider and they come to you and they want to get a commercial airplane, do they have to take a knowledge test?
Yes.
Very good.
Because that's powered, unpowered, or unpowered to powered.
Very good. So here is another question for you. And this is the hardest of the hard questions. You have someone come in. They are a helicopter private pilot. They've got 500 hours. They've got a lot of different, very diverse flight time in helicopters. But the last time they flew was about 10 years ago in a helicopter. You come in, you do the flight training for them, and now you're getting ready to solo them. What must you do in order to have this person solo the airplane?
Well, it's the same stuff. I mean, they need a medical, they need their Bravo Charlie November endorsements.
They can never, once they go through 6187, They are never, ever a student
Oh,
ever again. You can never
oh,
go back to 87.
hang on. There's an endorsement for this. It's like the solo without rating endorsement. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, 6131 Delta 2, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I didn't know which exact rate. Yeah, okay. So to act as pilot in command of an aircraft in solo ops when the pilot does not hold an appropriate category class rating, 6131 Delta 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that your answer?
That's my answer.
Is that all they need?
They need their medical. Obviously, if they haven't flown a long time, they need a current medical. They need that endorsement. They need their driver's license and all of those requirements, which was 61. We covered it earlier. Just a lot of information going in my brain right now.
All right, so here's the stump the chump.
Okay,
Do they need
give it to me. What?
Do they need a flight review?
Yeah. Yeah.
In what?
An airplane.
How can they get a flight review in an airplane? They're not rated in the airplane.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I guess they get a flight review in a helicopter.
They would have to go back, rent a helicopter, get a flight review, and then they'd be able to solo.
That's a weird rule because they're not even flying a helicopter.
I don't make the rules, brother.
Yeah.
So why is this like this is? Well, it specifically states that in order to solo, the person must be qualified to act as pilot in command.
Right.
And it states also that no person may act. If we go to 6156, it specifically states that no person may act as pilot in command. Let's see here. In paragraph Charlie, no person may act as pilot in command of an aircraft unless it's the beginning of the 24th calendar month for the month, blah, 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 blah. And
Accomplish their flight review
in an aircraft for which that person is rated.
So you got to be current in the aircraft that you're rated for before you can even get the 6131
Delta 2.
Delta 2.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, you still need a medical.
Oh, yeah. Everything else is still the same. I simply would just want to know about that. My question was the flight review. I just drug it out.
Yeah.
So, category class. How many hours would I need at a minimum? What's the let me ask you a question a different way. What would be the required? No. Let me ask you a question a different way. Can I go into? I'm going to make this a two-part question.
Okay.
The first part of the question, what is the required number of flight hours that I need for an additional class?
There is there isn't. So an additional class, there's no hour requirement on its proficiency.
Okay, so here's my second part of that question. Can I go to the check ride with 0 hours logged?
No, because you need to at least be found competent in the areas of the appropriate areas of operation. So you have to have the flight proficiency prescribed, but there's no set time on how long that's going to take.
There you go.
So if you can become proficient in 2 hours, then
so another way that examiners may get you on this is 6173. So 6173 is when you're doing something called a meal comp or a military competency. There is nothing for you to do on a meal comp as a flight instructor except help them to do their application.
So just IACRA.
It's just IACRA. So if they ask you any questions about meal comp, just say I would conform with 6173.
Okay.
Because there's nothing that you have to do. They just simply go in, they show their credentials, and there you go, done.
And that's just for a transition from whatever military license they had over to a civilian version of that license. Okay.
Yeah. So we're up to, just to let you know, student pilots, but unfortunately, my friend, I have to stop today.
Yeah, it's all right. I've got to process all this stuff anyways.
Okay.
All right, folks, I hope this video did help you. I'm going to keep stacking them up here. I've got some more double I stuff that's coming in the way, but it's just, wow, what a lot of time I'm spending on this double I stuff. It is really just taking up a lot of my time. But I'm hoping that you are moving right along through your training. And if you have any special requests, if you have questions, just do what everybody else does. Send me an email, send me a text, message me through Patreon. That's what I'm here for. That's why you're paying me the money every month, to be able to see great content and to be able to move forward in a logical fashion. I'm Todd with CFI Pro Courses. I look forward to seeing you at the airport and at the check ride. Take care.